I got symptoms. I need something. What's those reference ranges? What are the normal levels of testosterone?
There is no such thing as a quote-unquote normal or optimal reference range. What we know historically is that since the 60s or 70s, more or less, we've dropped basically 40 to 60% total testosterone since the 1960s or 70s, which also means that the reference range has dropped. I know it can't be whatever they're saying it is, though, because if you don't feel well and you're symptomatic, well, then this is a totally different conversation. And now we're talking about free testosterone.
A lot of clinics don't even test for free. They just test the total. And so talk about why free is important and how we can optimize that. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. I am super excited for our guest today. You know, the reason why we started Unscripted is really to cut through all the misinformation out there that's prevalent in this industry, and we've got the perfect guest to do that. We have Mr. Nico Misleh, who is the founder of Apollo Health, which is an awesome practice, but I think what a lot of people will resonate on is that he is actually the founder of HRT University, which really teaches clinicians how to do HRT right. And so first off, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, man. It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Give us some back. We have so much I want to cover with you, so I don't want to get into too much, but I do want to hear the backstory. Like, how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Yeah. Wow. It's a great question. I more or less knew I always wanted to get into healthcare and medicine in some capacity. My grandfather is a retired physician. He's like 95. He just gave up his medical license a year ago. So he finally felt like he couldn't go. Yeah, eventually was like, you know what? I think I need to turn this in. So anyways, he was a hero of mine. He owned his own clinic, family practice kind of guy, and was like just a really good old school clinician. You know, this was a guy who, pre-big medicine, pre-big insurance and all that kinds of stuff. So his head-to-toe exam was like a full 60-minute head-to-toe exam.
Yeah.
He was the best. But it was a shame because, kind of the later part of his career was, the opioid crisis and insurance and then, digital charting. And he just was like, man, this sucks. Like, it doesn't even feel like medicine anymore, right?
Yep.
And so he always knew I loved, what he did. And I always would tell him, I really want to be a doctor when I grow up. He was like, don't freaking go to med school. It sucks. It's terrible. It's a waste of time. Do something you love. Anyways, so I ignored him and I got into pre-med.
Of course, right?
Of course. And I got to be honest with you, even in pre-med, like you could feel the gravity of, for all the great, I'm not like disparaging doctors, but I have many friends who are amazing physicians. But just the gravity of the whole situation of like, you're going to be golden handcuffed for the rest of your life in this position. And so I did a few months of it. I'm thinking, I don't know what I want to do. And anyways, I met a family friend of ours who was like, you should become a nurse and then be a nurse practitioner. You can open up your own clinic. Like, she's dropping all these truths on me. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So that's what I did. I went to nursing school and then got my family nurse practitioner certificate and then opened up Apollo Health Optimization not too long after. And it's just been a total blessing. But the kind of getting into that whole space, I said, okay, so I know I want to own my own practice, but I definitely don't want to do the conventional model. Like I experienced that enough, even just in my rotations. Like I'm meeting these docs, they're, several hundreds of thousands of dollars in the hole. They're beholden to every single insurer under the planet. They can't prescribe anything that they want to prescribe. Even if they do, they're being dictated on the dosing and the regulations around that. And they were miserable. They were miserable. Like lovely people, miserable because they hated what they were doing, or the way they had to do it, let's say. So I knew right away and immediately, even in my rotations, I started pursuing, at the time they would have been called like holistic and integrative docs and nurse practitioners who literally, funny enough, 10 years ago, they were considered absolute quacks. And now they're like the smartest people on the planet.
Exactly. Yeah.
They like called all this amazing, they were doing hormones when it wasn't even cool. So anyways, I was really fortunate. Like I got to spend just copious amounts of time with these very free thinkers and they're running their own businesses, good or bad, they're doing their thing. And so I knew right away, I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all my chips on the table and pursue just doing things differently. And that's just how I've always kind of lived my whole life. It's just like, I think there's a better way. And if it doesn't seem like there is, I'll find a way to make it. And so that's where Apollo Health Optimization came in, which is our clinic. And it's just been an amazing ride. But I've always taught. That's always been a big thing for me is education. My grandfather was an amazing educator. My grandmother, basically my entire family is all in the education space in some way. So another weird like thing that just kind of got passed down. But I remember even in my early days of Apollo Health, I'd have nurse practitioners reach out. Hey, I'm a nurse practitioner student. I don't really want to grow up and just become this internist the rest of my life. And I love what you're doing. And so they'd come in and they were just super impressed, and it was fun. And I started then getting some speaking gigs because I started kind of talking about hormones and mental health and things like that, kind of on a national scale. And that's when it just blew up. All of a sudden I had providers, hey, I'm in Utah, any chance I can come out and spend a few days with you? And that just exploded. And so I had almost a year or two of just running through what would eventually become my kind of HRT University curriculum with all these different providers, and really getting a sense of like, oh, okay, this is where you feel strapped down, or this is where you feel uncomfortable, or you don't feel confident in these certain areas, and why. And then I would dig deeper. And so when I created HRT University, one of the things I was trying to solve for was, okay, well, what's the sticking point here for some of these people? And how can we get you past this? Because this is in my head, I'm like, this is the safest, most amazing, incredible therapy out there amongst many things. But why is it that you get stuck in some of these things? And it was, again, just kind of a lot of that unlearning and getting rid of some of the dogma and doctrine crap, all the BS that we know. And so eventually kind of creating a course that, I knew the next question they were going to ask, right? Like, okay, I talk about testosterone replacement therapy. I know they're going to ask about prostate cancer and cardiovascular disease and heart attacks and strokes. And how do I come about with a good answer for that? So, because most of the courses we would take, honestly, there are some other great courses out there, but they're still very conventional in the sense of, it's very dry, it's super boring. Here's the facts, here's the literature, blah, 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 and we move on. Someone asks a question, it's almost more like it's always a how dare you, right? Like, don't you know I'm the smartest guy alive? Just trust me. And now it's like, dude, this is the age of Google and ChatGPT. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't know, like, it kind of comes off as like maybe you really don't know. So that's another thing we've really tried to, not reinvent the wheel, but just create a totally different, category in and of itself in a lot of ways.
And you mentioned some of those sticking points as you educate these clinicians. I mean, and you talked about a couple of them, but specifically, what have you seen? What is that sticking point, or what are some of these dogmas that we need to get rid of? You mentioned things like the prostate cancer and what have you, but what do you see when you're talking to folks?
Arguably, I'd say the cancer thing, the C word, is one of the big ones, right? I mean, you get into this job in the hopes of every single life you touch, you make exponentially better. And the idea that we could give someone something, God forbid, that gives them cancer, is terrifying. It's more terrifying I think in many ways, of course, like we would be scared from a legal standpoint, and God forbid if we get sued or something like that. But, it's way more terrifying from the sense of I just destroyed someone's life.
Yeah.
So again, the irony of this is so crazy. So a great example is and I'll pick on females. A female patient comes into my office. She's, 47 years old. She can't sleep. She's anxious. She's super irritable. Her vagina's dry. She's miserable. She's struggling with her relationships with her husband and with her kids. She's struggling at work. And she goes to her primary care and dumps this all on him or her. And all they say is, wow, it sounds an awful lot like depression or anxiety or both.
Exactly.
An antidepressant. But doc, I'm not, no, wait a second. I'm not depressed or anxious. Like, I don't feel like myself anymore. Like, everything was fine and now I'm not fine. Well, that's how depression and anxiety can act. Try this antidepressant. And they take the antidepressant, they gain 20 pounds and they feel worse. And now their libido's totally gone and their husband's upset and frustrated and their kids are still, it just is this roller coaster effect. And then they might go back to their primary care.
Yep.
And it's, oh, well, you know what? I'm sorry that antidepressant didn't help. It might be hormonal. I mean, you could be in perimenopause. Here's some birth control. And so now it's like, okay, so the first option was basically this very inappropriate therapy, which is like, you actually said you knew it was probably hormonal, but you didn't start there. You started with an antidepressant, which made things worse. Then she comes back and you give her a medicine that chemically essentially castrates her as a human being, meaning when you give birth control, it just destroys the own body's production of these beautiful natural hormones, progesterone and estradiol, right? So now let me pause you and say every single provider, arguably speaking, in the world would have no like first thought of like those were the wrong things to do. They would say that seems totally appropriate. And yet if I ask them, well, did you make sure you gave informed consent on both that antidepressant and the birth control? Did you read the black box warning label to these ladies?
Yep.
Most of them would say no, or they didn't even know that was a thing. And if they did, probably most of those women would have smacked them upside the head and said, no way. I don't want a risk of suicidal ideation. I don't want blood clots and all these things. So again, we're making mountains out of molehills. All of a sudden, when now we're talking about bioidentical hormones, same woman comes in, I say, you know what? This is a no-brainer. First of all, I'm going to check your blood work because I know based on your age and your symptoms, right? Of course, you sound like you're in perimenopause. I know you're in perimenopause. I'm going to go ahead and check your blood work anyways because I want to look at even some other things that could be going on, maybe your thyroid, whatever. And then I'm going to give you the appropriate treatments, which would be bioidentical hormones, so that it actually makes you a better version of yourself and you restore back to the person that you were and you always have been. And by the way, there's not really any contraindications here because it's a bioidentical hormone. And here's all the randomized control trials and literature that says this is the best idea ever for your situation. And so again, it's just like, how do we reframe that for people?
Yep.
Because again, the scare is cancer. And now I can show you, actually, there is no threat of that. It's not a real thing. It does not increase the risk of cancer. In fact, in some ways, it decreases certain risks of, say, colon cancer, for example.
Yep.
It does not increase suicidal ideation. It does not cause clots or strokes or heart attacks or any of these things. And your life, your health, actually, your trajectory of health improves over time rather than diminishes over time. So I hope that it's a long-winded answer, but I hope that is like kind of those are the things that we have to like tease out of people and like, hey, remember, we have this cognitive bias, so we're just not thinking through these things all the way.
No, it's beautiful. And I'm glad you mentioned the example of the female. I think that's actually a very common today. And it's probably the most underserved piece of the entire HRT equation, as all this is women, right? And it's becoming more and more, the awareness is becoming more prevalent. But when you, using that example and looking at their markers, what are some of the things that you see when you look at the blood work? And again, everybody's different. I understand that, but what are some red flags that you see?
I mean, classically, again, if we're just looking at, say, a female in perimenopause, a few very obvious things that we should see is a progesterone that is just absolutely in the tank. I mean, it should be practically in the single digits, if not zero by then, which is really the hormone. Again, a lot of people always associate females with estrogen, and females make a ton of estrogen. That's true, and it is a part of their development. But men actually make a ton of estrogen too.
Yep.
What really separates us is progesterone. Women make a ton of it. It is really what, in my opinion, I always say, like, progesterone is kind of to women what testosterone is to men. That is kind of the dividing factor, and progesterone just stands out so much. When you have low progesterone, that is the beginnings of when most of the females that you'll see as patients are, they're figuring out something's wrong. They suddenly feel more anxious for no reason. They feel more irritable. Some of them will say they feel rage or aggression, which again might be very new to them as like even an emotion as a whole. A lot of them will start complaining of sleep. Again, is one of the most common things you'll hear is like, Nico, I'm just not sleeping. Like, I go to bed. I might even be in bed for 8 hours, but I wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and I'm up the rest of the night. Those are the things that so again, progesterone, estradiol in perimenopause, it's waxing and waning, right? Like one day you could check it, it's 500. The next day it's 2. The day after that, it's 20. So that's what's doing this kind of roller coaster, but it's really progesterone that is just absolutely tanking and is what is kind of, starting that kind of runaway train. And then again, of course, we want to be checking testosterone, and that should be done at all these hormones should really be checked in any female's lifetime. Doesn't really matter. But again, I think a lot of us are so used to boxing people into like, well, if you're perimenopause, you take this. And if you're, menopause, you take that. Testosterone is like a start to finish, like the hormone that if a woman is low or a male is low, you give it to them. because testosterone is so vital. And again, it's one of those other weird, classically, it's considered a male hormone, but women make a ton of it and they thrive off of it just like we do.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of checking that. And again, in perimenopause, we should relatively see just a total decline in most of the hormones. DHEA is another one I really like to check.
Yep.
Again, another kind of what we call male androgen hormone, very tied to longevity in a lot of ways is what we're seeing now, and in the immune system. And then again, I love to check thyroid. Again, that's a no-brainer for all ages. Like,
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
Always. I've always thought, and again, this kind of harkens back to some of those old school HRT clinics. For some reason, thyroid was like never or very rarely a part of it. It was always just sex hormones. Here's your T, E, and P. See you later. Or if you're a guy, just TRT. And so I've seen so many more clinics now, and this is great, including progesterone and testosterone and whatever other thing that is necessary for that person. So thyroid's huge. And then I like to check things like sex hormone binding globulin, which again is, we can go real nerdy there, but it's a great metric to look for and get accustomed to for both men and women, because it tells us so much about things like free testosterone and what's actually available, and even like as a kind of secondary like metabolic marker, how good is their metabolism and things like that. So those are things I'm typically looking.
Yeah, there's so much there, brother. Like every topic you wanted to, I would love to dive in with you, but I guess that's for people to purchase your course and to, go into all that. But I did want to talk about one of the things that was on my list to talk to you about is free versus total test and kind of what the difference is. I think that's, again, a lot of clinics that I see don't even test for free. They just test the total. And so talk about the differences, talk about why free is important and how we can optimize that.
Absolutely. And God forbid if there are even people who might be patients curious about this listening, if you just went to your primary care provider and you demanded that they check a testosterone, first of all, they're going to tell you no. If you ask them 2 or 3 more times, they might say yes. And if they check it almost always, and you're right, Jeff, even some HRT clinics, they might just check what is called a total testosterone. And I always like to make analogies out of this because it's confusing otherwise. Total testosterone is how much gas do you have in the tank of your car? How much do you have? Head to toe, what's in your body right here and now. And we get these kind of larger numbers. So for men, for example, this because it's a little easier, a total testosterone reference range is somewhere like, 200 to 900. Which, by the way, we could talk about how that's a total cluster as well. Because when I first started, it was actually like 300 to 1200, but it's dropped magically somehow. So that's the reference range. And they say if it's between 200 and 900, it's totally normal. Everything's fine. So if you come back at 201 and the cutoff is 200, you're good to go, Johnny boy. Everything's fine. I'm sorry your wiener doesn't work, and I'm sorry you've gained so much weight and you're tired all the time. I don't know what to tell you. It sounds like depression. Take SSRI. So if total testosterone is the gas in the tank of your car, what we're really not learning from that is, well, that doesn't really tell us about how you function with it. At the end of the day, this is just again, the gas in the tank of the car doesn't actually move the car. It doesn't do anything. It just sits there. So if you're kind of on the same line of thinking here, free testosterone is of that total testosterone, of all the gas that's in the tank of your car, how much of that is actually making it to the engine? Mm-hmm. When I turn the key over, or if you have a ignition switch and you click it and your engine just immediately starts, that's a good sign. That's okay. Your body is operating. There's something there to turn the engine on. How much free testosterone do we have? So there's a calculation that we can use. And by the way, if you're you don't have to be a genius to do this. You can literally go online and type in free testosterone calculator. There's 100 of them. And basically it's a very fancy calculation where you're taking your total testosterone and you're more or less kind of subtracting it from something called albumin, which is a protein that your body produces, as well as another protein called sex hormone binding globulin. And it spits out this number, and it's usually kind of lower than it's smaller than the total testosterone. So, a typical range right now is like 7 to 20. And that would be your free testosterone. So this is where it gets really interesting because, again, if you're a male, I've had multiple patients come in 67-year-old was the most recent one. 67-year-old male complaining of all the typical, like think of the most stereotypical low T symptoms, erectile dysfunction, lack of motivation, weight gain, poor fatigue, and the list goes on, right? I check his total testosterone. And if I had just looked at his total, I would have been floored because it came back at like 937. Like it was like above the reference range.
Yep.
And in fact, he said, Nico, that's so crazy because my primary care checked it and it was like 950 when he checked it. But then when we calculated his free testosterone, it came back at 3. Right. And again, the reference range is like, if you're being generous, 7 to 20.
Right.
We could talk all about that too. But So he's way off the reference interval, way off. And free testosterone, what I'm getting at here is, again, total testosterone, how much gas do you have in the tank of your car, tells me nothing about how you operate in terms of your testosterone. Free testosterone is what we correlate and what is generally best correlated with your symptoms.
Yeah.
So the same could be true also, right? Vice versa.
100%. And so if I recognize, and to your point, I was actually asked to be on the board for a very prominent HRT clinic that was working with thousands of patients. And in the lab test, they didn't test for free. And I'm like, guys, what are we doing here? If we really want to optimize folks, and literally thousands of patients had just been getting total test readouts, and we made the change, which is great. But it's just, there's so much misinformation out there. And again, that's why I think people need to, educate themselves, and HRT University is a great way to do that. But if I find that I have low free, what are ways that I can work with my doc to free that up?
It's a great question. And I'll speak medically. Of course, there, depending on your age, and there's many things that we could do naturally and with supplements and things if we wanted to. But when we're really looking at it from a testosterone replacement therapy perspective, it is the gold standard. It is the best way to improve your testosterone numbers, and specifically your free testosterone. Where we want to be really careful, and this is where I think you go from a mediocre clinician to a really, really great clinician or an expert, is when it comes to free testosterone. So let's say you have a total testosterone and it's 200, which is really low, and your free testosterone is 7, which is also pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to give that patient a whole big old dose of testosterone all at one time, like a conventional 200 milligram dose once a week.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have enough of this binding protein, this sex hormone binding globulin, think of them like Pac-Man, to bind up some of the excess. So it's going to make him really symptomatic. It might make him, kind of have some swelling in his legs. It might have some acne and oily skin, and he's just not going to feel that good. Versus, hey, this gentleman, we call him cheap dates. He doesn't need a lot. We can give him a much smaller dose of testosterone. And in fact, what we'll do is we'll split it up over the week, multiple times potentially, so that we don't have these great big spikes and peaks in his total testosterone levels. We have these really nice, stable, peaks and troughs. And he is totally symptom free. And again, this is where I think so many clinics fail, just on that alone, because if you don't understand that, you might just inadvertently give someone way too much testosterone all at once, and now they're going to quit on you, and they're going to think testosterone's the devil, and you've just done a disservice to yourself and unfortunately to that patient.
Using injectable testosterone, how many times do you recommend in a given week? I know it ranges for different folks, but what's your general recommendation?
At the very minimum, at least twice a week. Mm-hmm. In fact, I practically don't recommend ever doing once a week. I really don't. The half-life of Jeff, what you're talking about, testosterone cypionate, which is the injectable version of testosterone that's most widely available. There's many types, but that half-life of that medication is 7 days.
Yep.
So if you think, right, I inject a whole bunch of testosterone in 7 days, I'm going to be at 50% of where I was, say, I'm on Sunday to Sunday.
Yep.
I would much rather you not have that much of a fluctuation. Most guys just feel not so good. They'll tell you, they'll say, Nico, I'm starting to feel like crap. And it's like Friday or Saturday. And I can't wait for my injection day. I'm like, well, you don't have to feel like crap. We'll just split the dose up. So at minimum, you take it twice a week, and now you're at a, maybe 25% drop, which maybe doesn't feel so tangible. But there are people who, the more times, the better. That's not always true. I mean, there are people who do flawlessly with twice a week. I have a handful of patients that they swear by injecting every single day. That's the way they thrive, and they feel really good there. And again, it makes sense. So on average, again, in my clinic, 2 to 3 times a week is kind of the input of injections.
And do you notice a difference? I know there's different carrier oils for the testosterone cypionate. There's, the grapeseed oil, there's the MCT oil, which is becoming very popular. Do you notice a difference, and what are those differences?
I don't notice it substantially from grapeseed to MCT for the most part. Where I notice it really substantially is like cottonseed oil to grapeseed oil, or cottonseed oil to, or even this, sesame oil, I think is usually the other common one. Those are just these disgustingly nasty industrial seed oils that they're utilizing. And it's just a travesty to inject that into human bodies at this point, because we have grapeseed oil. And even better, if MCT is creme de la creme, it is literally healthful for you.
Yeah.
It's a very thin viscosity, right? So it injects really smoothly and all that. It's very thin. So MCT is amazing. Like, if you have access to it, it's definitely the go-to. And it looks like, frankly, that is quickly becoming that. Because I remember when grapeseed oil was like all the rage, and it was amazing. I could finally get away from cottonseed oil. But again, between the two, not too much. I will say, a lot of the acne sufferers out there, it's amazing sometimes just changing the carrier oil for whatever reason. Maybe it's kind of a slight allergenic response, or it just bumps up your inflammation a little bit. I have noticed that moving from grapeseed to MCT it can make a difference for some of those patients.
Yeah, we've noticed the same. And at Scripps, a lot of the pharmacies that we work with are really shifting over to MCT. They're just getting better results. And a lot of the clinics obviously are shifting that way as well. I also noticed, we've done some work together, and I noticed that you use a lot of creams, testosterone creams. Talk about that. I mean,
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation about it. I'd love to.
There is, man. Where to begin? I think first and foremost, it's a bias thing that we have. And I think it's mostly because a lot of us, especially men, if we hear cream, usually we hear gel, and what we think of is androgel or Testim, or some of these just kind of god-awful products from big pharma. They're very low concentration. They have a bunch of alcohol in them. They smell terrible. They don't apply well, and they don't make you feel better. So a lot of guys, they feel shy around that. When we're talking about compounded creams, like the stuff that you guys provide, it is unbelievably different. I mean, it is literal apples to oranges. It is, jet fuel versus some crappy diesel or whatever. Like, it's really the best you can get. Creams and gels oftentimes are also not done properly. And all I mean by that is they're usually concentrated too low still, because again, it's not really a one-to-one with injections, which is confusing. So you'll hear, oh my God, apply 200 milligrams of cream or gel a day. Holy crap. Like, I give my patient 200 milligrams barely a week. It's not the same thing. You're not absorbing 200 milligrams. You're lucky if you absorb 30% of that, right? Every day. So again, that's a confusing part. And then how often you have to apply it is oftentimes a little confusing. So, again, most of my male patients apply testosterone cream, even some of my female patients, twice a day, splitting the dose up, making sure that we get really nice stable levels that way, because the half-life is really short. It's like 12 hours basically. The other thing I would definitely say with creams, again, especially on the female side, if I can speak to that more, is that again, a lot of females say, oh, I hate the creams, they just didn't work well. It's probably because your provider didn't dose it high enough or frequently enough, or the area you're applying to. Like, a lot of ladies are still applying it to like their rib cage or the back of their knee, which is okay. But like most of my women, they're applying it intravaginally or like interlabia area, and it's unbelievably better absorption there. Same with men, right? Scrotum versus say like your armpit or some stupid area like that. It makes such a huge difference. So creams are amazing. It's really a lifestyle thing. If you can't brush your teeth once a day, like, creams are going to be difficult. I tell my guys, like, it's going to be challenging. Like, don't go that route if that's difficult. I'd much rather you do injections if you can do something, any amount of hormone is better than none, but I'd really prefer you to be consistent with it.
But you don't see a drop off in the efficacy using creams right, dosed properly versus injectable?
No. And I'll speak to myself. I've tried testosterone every which way under the sun because I'm a psycho and I can't help myself.
You and me
I've tried
both.
it all.
Yeah.
Injections to creams. Frankly, I like the creams better. I really do.
Really?
I use a I say creams and gels interchangeably here, guys.
Yeah.
It's technically a gel, but it is not it's a compounded gel. It's amazing. It's really, really nice consistency. My levels are always better, if not the same, using creams versus injections. So again, the bias of like, oh, there's just no way, bro, that you could ever get levels high enough. You totally can. It's just a concentration and application thing. And there are, I will say there are some guys and gals that whatever, I don't know if it's a skin thing and they just don't absorb it for whatever reason, or they just don't like it, so they don't put it on. You're not going to get good levels if either of those things are true.
One thing that I hear as a concern for using creams or gels is that, if I'm applying it to, my scrotum as an example, as a male, and I'm intimate with my partner, is that going to be an issue for her? Is she going to start growing a beard?
Yes. That's such a good question.
I hear it all the time. That's why
I hear it all the time too. I tell all my patients the same thing. Like, dude, I would be out of a job so fast if that was true. So first and foremost, super common fear. And by the way, it's a legitimate fear in the sense that you do need to educate around that. You don't want to apply testosterone cream as a male and then go touch your kids or your loved one with a testosterone cream hand. That's a really bad idea. But the risk of transference, if done appropriately, is basically 0%. First and foremost, my guys, especially guys, and even gals, you're applying it to your nether regions, to your groin, essentially. Most of the public's not open to that all day long. You wash your hands like a normal human being and all that good stuff. You're good to go. If it comes to sexual intercourse and things like that, the time frame of waiting there's no real hard and fast rule. I've heard up to 4 hours. I've heard as little as 60 minutes. I typically just say, hey, look, if you apply your cream, wait 2 hours prior to intercourse. If you can't wait, wipe it off and go have fun. Or if that's going to happen, don't apply it, have your fun, and then apply it, kind of thing. But, my wife, I have a wife, two, and nobody has a beard in my house. Everybody's fine. Most of my patients don't listen to me about any of this stuff anyways, and none of them have had any issues. So that risk is way, way, way smaller than people think. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. A lot of misinformation there. The other piece of misinformation, and you touched on it a couple times, and I want to dive into it, is what's those reference ranges? What are the normal levels of testosterone? And I'll tell you, just before we got on this podcast here, I got a call from an individual who'd reached out via social media, and he was struggling. He's in his early 30s, was diagnosed in the low 200s, hypogonadism, very similar to my story, similar age. And he's gone to 10 docs, and they're all saying that he's in a normal range. And he's like, no, I got symptoms. I need something, and he's not getting it. So can you talk about ranges, optimization, and I'll kind of share my story in that as well, but I'd love to hear yours.
Absolutely. And I love that you're sharing. I mean, I similarly, I started testosterone replacement therapy when I was 31, 32. And after years of, and again, I consider myself quite smart. I'd been actually prescribing it for years of people. And, I was kind of one of those guys like, oh, there's no way it's my problem. And it totally was. And it changed my life. But so when it comes to reference ranges, first and foremost, there is no such thing as a quote unquote normal or optimal reference range. What I mean by that is that's never been studied or proven ever. We literally don't know what that is. When we look at reference ranges or intervals, right, from a little number to a big number, say if you go to LabCorp or Quest or any one of those big laboratory in America, what they're looking at is typically a pool of not a ton of people, like 3,000, what they would consider healthy adults. And this is already when we're off, because healthy by what standard? And it is typically just the conventional medicine standard. Ironically, you can be overweight and be healthy, just to clarify. Your A1C could be a certain number and you could still qualify. Again, so now we have all these questions of well, what do you mean by healthy? It's a broad range, right? So it's usually men, 18 to say 65 or something like that. All these guys, they go get their blood work done, and then they take, all those ranges and they kind of average it out. And okay, here's the lowest end and here's the highest end. That is now what we consider normal. What we know historically is that since the 60s or 70s, more or less, depending on what study you're looking at, we've dropped on average 10%. I mean, we've dropped basically 40 to 60% total testosterone since the 1960s or 70s, which also means that the reference range has dropped 40 to
Good point.
60% too,
Yep.
right? So now all of a sudden there's all these questions that I mean, I remember having going into this is I don't even, what is optimal? I'm not really sure. I know it can't be whatever they're saying it is though. Okay. So even at 900 total testosterone, which again, a lot of people say, wow, look, I'm so proud. My testosterone came back at 900. I would say, that's like, all right. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. Like, do
Yeah.
you feel good there though? Because if you don't feel well and you're symptomatic, well, then this is a totally different conversation. And now we're talking about free testosterone, and where does that sit? So, when it comes to the reference intervals, again, what a lot of us in the wellness space have kind of determined what is an optimal range is a relative ballpark. Generally speaking, it exists outside of the reference interval. So meaning most guys in my clinic, an average free testosterone is somewhere between 20 and 40. An average total is probably no lower than 800, no higher than 13, 1400. So we're looking at like astronomically higher numbers. But then again, if we look back historically, those are probably about right. Then we get into, it just gets really deep here, Jeff, because then we can talk about things like androgen resistance.
Yeah.
Or androgen sensitivity, which is no different than, again, if anybody's ever heard of insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity, it's the same concept. Is it possible that, no matter how much androgens we produce, we become resistant to it, and we actually need to flood the system with more to overcome that? Just like I would give a diabetic who has tons of insulin, more insulin because they're resistant to it. And so again, a lot of people might say, well, it sounds like you're speculating. I'm not. That's like actually in the scientific literature is what we're seeing. We've had environmental exposures, BPA, phthalates, all these things we hear about, microplastics and crap like that, which sounds so hokey. But again, if you look at the studies in the literature, infants and so, fetuses in utero exposed to these plastic chemicals literally have Leydig cells, which are the cells in the testicles that produce testosterone. They have damage there.
Yeah.
And so we're literally, I'm telling people we're born behind the eight ball. Yeah. And I'm not trying to make a victim of people, but like, this is just kind of the world we're living in. So when it comes to hormone replacement therapy, now we're kind of looking at it as like, oh, no, this isn't even like a fringe thing or like, oh, when you get, to be 50 or 60 years old, we can talk about it. This is like actually, we should be considering this for 20-year-olds, for our teenage gals who are suffering from horrible fertility issues and whatnot. Anyways, I'm going off on a huge rant, but those are why these reference ranges and intervals they're kind of dangerous. It's a really dangerous way to kind of think through this.
100%. And to your point, exactly that. I started on my TRT journey, and same thing, really hypogonadism in my early 30s. It was really taboo. It was really weird. Nobody really knew what they were doing. And so finally, when I decided to actually invest in TRT and decide, hey, you know what, this is something I'm going to do the rest of my life. It actually took me about 8 years before I truly felt optimized. And the reason why is because I wasn't working with folks that understood that it's okay to be outside the reference range. And so as an example now, I feel great at 1200. That's where I feel perfect, no symptoms. I feel great. It's everything that I've always wanted. But again, if you talk to folks who haven't been educated like this, they'd tell me I'm crazy, so.
You kill yourself, your heart's going to explode or I don't know, something.
Yeah, exactly. Like yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I want to shift gears a little bit because one of the things that you work with on an HRT University and your events and different things is really helping clinics to grow and scale and become, as you put it, 7-figure clinics. What are some of the tools that folks have access to you through your education? What do you help folks do?
Yeah, I'm so thankful you brought that up. We're growing in that space more and more. One of the things again we really drive towards is what do clinicians need? And no fluff, no BS. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I have a $50 million clinic, blah, blah, blah. I have a great clinic. I make $1 million a year out of it, revenue, blah, blah, blah. Like I'll show you my numbers. Like it's healthy. It's great. I'm doing this other thing called education, but I think a lot of people assume that it's this giant hurdle and you have to scale up to Jeff Bezos levels of business. And for most providers, that's not true. Like we're just trying to escape the rat race and make a good living. And so what we're trying to provide people with is actionable things, and just business principles, frankly. You know this in sense of probably looking at medical providers. Jeff, would you say that medical providers are good business owners on average?
I think there's a lot of value that you can provide for them. I'll just say it the nice way.
Yeah. Most of us aren't. We suck at it. We love helping people, which in a lot of ways hurts us in some sense. We're always out there trying to do the best we can and help people, and probably get taken advantage of more often than not. So, and none of us really learn some of the just principal things about business. Like when we talk about ROI or profit and loss and just kind of basic things like that. I didn't know any of that stuff. And so even just in terms of marketing and whatnot, like how do we create amazing programs so that we're getting awesome, patient experiences, and the patient journey from A to Z is flawless. And that creates a great referral network rather than like, again, the shiny object syndrome, which is like post 8,000 times a day on Instagram and, throw $10,000 that you don't have on ads and then buy this dumb laser machine that you don't know how to use. Like there's all these things that, again, like it is a shiny object syndrome. And so, we're trying to do more live events where we're trying to, also like be able to break out in small group sessions, because we have just some amazing clinic owners, like incredible. They're crushing it and they share so much value. I mean, I learned stuff at every single one of these. And then even on the other side, in terms of HRT University, we have weekly calls. So once a week on a Tuesday, we hop on for an hour. We talk about clinical case studies. Sometimes it's just all business. Like, hey, Nico, this is my monthly membership model, and here's how I've got things set up, and this is my pharmacy, and this is how I'm paying for things, and does this make any sense? And I feel like I'm losing money. And we can literally, as a group, first of all, say, hey, you're doing amazing. This ain't easy. And let me just share with you some of the things that have worked for me and some of the losses that I've had to take.
No, that's beautiful. And what folks are getting through that is exactly what I had done when I was asked to join the board, or I've consulted for different practices, is really educate folks on the blocking and tackling, right? It's like, okay, what are your margins today? What do we need to do to grow and grow profitably? And how can we, make this more efficient? And that's honestly, that was the genesis of Scripps, is we really recognized a huge need in the industry to be able to get medications that are cost effective, that are quality medications. And so that's an area we've certainly been able to help a lot of clinics. But to your point, there's a lot of pieces to that. And that's why what you're doing, I think, is so powerful. One of the things that you mentioned is the subscription model. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that. It's something that I know a lot of groups are doing. Some are opposed to that. What's your general thought on that?
I kind of fell into that model more or less. I'd always done fee for service. So I should mention, before Apollo Health Optimization, I actually had a previous clinic that was purely functional medicine. That was really my calling in life. And I kind of switched gears a little bit, but it was always fee for service and whatnot. And it was great. It really was. It was very profitable. I did amazing. But it was feast or famine. Always. It was always feast or famine, right? I was super, super busy. And if I took off for vacation, it would I'm just not getting paid this week, I guess. When I switched to the subscription service, of course, that there was just this levity that came when all of a sudden I'm getting paid no matter what I'm doing, kind of thing. What also comes with that a lot of providers don't understand is a shitload of responsibility.
Exactly. Yep.
You have to freaking show up. You have to provide unbelievable, not that you shouldn't in any model, but you really have to show up and be present and provide unbelievable value and service to your clients. Again, much like Netflix doesn't just throw up 100 movies and say, see you later.
Right.
You're optimal now. Have fun watching the same 100 movies for the rest of your life. They're just going to keep pumping out content over and over and over and over and over again. Some of it might be shit, some of it might be great, but it doesn't matter. They're always contacting you. What can we do better? So it's the same concept in the medical industry or any industry. If you're going to do some sort of subscription service, be prepared to provide unbelievable value forever. And I think that's fun. I think it almost like bakes in again, like I can't escape it. If I'm losing, it's probably because I've backed away from that, or, I got lazy and I didn't feel like doing it. But the consistency in terms of recurring revenue is unbelievable. I think it's so wonderful. I almost always tell people at some point, like, look, you don't have to do that in every sense of the word, but if you can find a way to make some sort of part of your business recurring revenue, it's fantastic.
And what do you find as far as patient response to that? If it's like another membership fee, right? It's like, what am I really getting for that?
Yeah, 100%. There's for sure there are patients who hate it. And they're
No,
not
I
going
get
to,
it.
by the way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're not going to sign up with me. They just don't like that. We're very transparent about that. So, again, for better, for worse, I've always been an advocate for that. Like, I don't want people having to feel like they have to dig to figure out how I'm going to get gouged by Nico. I just want you to know this is how much I charge, and this is why, and these are the things that I'm going to bring to the table for you. And I'd much rather go in with that. But again, for some patients, I actually have found that some patients felt really icky about that at first. Mm-hmm. And they signed up and thinking, I think this guy knows what he's doing, and this sounds great, and his other providers are excellent. And the more they've been with us, they're like, oh, okay, I see the value here. Because when I text him, he texts me back.
Yeah.
When I need a refill, I get it the next day. When I need anything, hey, Nico, I'm going in for surgery, and, oh my God, I feel really nervous. Like, I just want, they'll ask me questions like that. Oh, absolutely. Hey man, like, I'm not a surgeon, but like, I'll say a prayer for you, and, like, I'll hold your hand. Like, I'll do whatever it takes. Like, I want to be there for you. And I feel like it just kind of bakes in this relationship that I don't think you get as much if you're doing that fee for service stuff. And then now it just becomes this, well, I'm going to freaking nickel and dime you every chance I get, because that's the only way I can make a living off you.
And so if somebody was a subscriber to your program and your services, how often would they have access to you? I'm just trying to kind of vet this model.
I love that. Yeah. I love that question. So definitely, you have to have barriers. So first and foremost, of course, I'm not an urgent care or even a primary care clinic.
Right.
We're a wellness-based clinic, meaning there's not really any emergency, so to speak. No one's arm's going to fall off with the stuff that we're doing, right? So I tell my patients I'm available, working hours, mm-hmm. whatever that is, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. If I, by the way, I'll answer occasionally after hours if there's something going on and it needs to be addressed. If people have a question and they text me, hey Nico, I'm really nervous, I started having this. I'll call, if I have 5 minutes, I'm going to call you. Like, I want to be able to show up for you in that sense. But you definitely have to create boundaries. If I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. My receptionist will handle things. I've got another provider. She's amazing. She's going to handle all your questions and stuff like that. But we provide, at least, on average, quarterly follow-up appointments. This is where we typically land with things. Right. I think it's, in some ways, again, in my model, it's dangerous to offer unlimited appointments because, yes, frankly, you're going to run into some issues with some people. Again, if you're primary care or doing like that, might be a nice thing to have, because you really, you might need to be like that. But, so again, quarterly follow-up appointments, they can text me, call me whenever they want. And honestly, I have patients who they just need a little hand holding, and I'll break that rule every now and then. Hey, how you doing? You doing all right? Again, as far as actually being there for patients and whatnot, we just have our hard, firm boundaries. This is when we're available. This is when we're not. And when we are available, we are 100% available.
No, I think that's key. That's great. I want to talk about HRT University. I've gone through the program. It is awesome. I mean, mind-blowing awesome. You've done a fantastic job. It's designed for clinicians who really want to educate themselves on how to do this right and to really get that deep understanding. Tell folks exactly what they can expect with HRT University. How does the program facilitated? And then I also want to talk about the event that you just did as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, first of all, you're a legend in this space, and
I appreciate
if anybody knows HRT, it's you. You've been in the game for longer than pretty much anybody I know, probably. So that means a lot. HRT University is a digital education course. It's pre-recorded, and it is absolutely freaking amazing. So one of the things that, again, we saw in the industry, my team and I, is that medical education, first of all, it sucks. It's super boring. It's really, really dry. And I understand some of the concepts and theories and stuff we go over, and they're not the sexiest things in the world all the time. But can we at least make it aesthetically pleasing to look at if we're going to have to stare at it for hours on end? Can we make it beautiful? Can we make it new? Again, I see so many just overused PowerPoints and crappy materials from the God knows when. We just wanted to bring a super fresh look to it and really set ourselves apart. A lot of people are like, well, Nico, what makes you different from all the other courses? I'm like, well, those are just courses. What we want to provide to you is the new standard of education when it comes to HRT. So again, we have pre-recorded videos. Again, a lot of providers would tell me, Nico, I can't make it to a freaking live event every single weekend. Like, that's really hard for me to commit to. I've got kids, I've got my clinic, it's expensive. And we just wanted to literally be able to be in your pocket. So you can download an app, you can listen to us while you're, going on a jog or working out or dropping your kids off at school. Those are our people. We're providers and we're parents and we're busy and we got shit going on. So again, we wanted to make it extraordinarily accessible. Our pricing is, I think, unbeatable in that sense. Like, again, we went in saying, hey, we're going to provide just insane amounts of value and not make it some crazy, insane price that just doesn't make any sense because there's no way it's that helpful, or make it so cheap that it's just dog shit. So we really felt passionate about that in the sense of like, all right, we're going to show up just like I do with my clinic. We've involved, we built an AI bot, which is incredible. Her name's Pearl. She's just totally changed the game.
I love it. Yeah.
Again, another thing I'm thinking forward here is, okay, most of the providers out there, they take these courses and then what? What do they do? Maybe they, it's not like I give my number out to 500 students. I love them all, but I'm not going to give my number. So I can't always be available. I'm on these chats and all these things. And then we have a private community, which is amazing. But there are times when I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a provider. I've got a patient coming in 5 minutes and I've got a burning question and I don't know what the hell to do. Mm-hmm. And so what a lot of providers would do is jump into some terrible Facebook group, ask a question, and then just get annihilated by their peers for asking what is a great question, and they all call them stupid. Or they're dropping it into Google, which God knows what you're going to get from that.
Yep.
Or ChatGPT, which is going to hallucinate and tell you to give them, I don't know, an SSRI. So I said, okay, none of those are great, but I understand the problem. The problem is you need a mentor, and you need a mentor that's 24/7.
Mm.
I can't do that. I would love to do that, but I can't. And no one else can. But can we utilize AI in a not gross way that can bring unbelievable amounts of value? So we created Pearl, this chat bot, and I dumped all of my material into this bot.
Mm.
So the first thing it does when you ask a question, it does not go to, the wild, wild west of the internet web and some dark alley and provide you this answer. It'll say, hey, you know what? Nico said in this part of the course. So again, another great feature is it'll literally find, like in section 3, part 1 of the female course, Nico says X, Y, and Z. Also, here's a relevant quote. And do you have any other questions on that? Also, I can provide you more information if you would like. So now it's even prompting you like, hey, do you need to think through this more? Or like, what exactly are the questions you're maybe not asking so that we can make sure we're giving you a really good answer? And she has been just extraordinary. Like, it's super popular. Like, people just rant and rave about her. And so we're about to, we did kind of a beta launch with her to get some more information. We're going to launch her live here in a little bit. But again, that's just another huge asset in terms of the course. The master course is what we also try to differentiate is A to Z of hormone replacement therapy. So we have an introduction section, which is literally like, I want to give you the why behind HRT. And I don't want it to be because it fixes old guys' wieners or it makes women's bones stronger. I want it to be like, you understand the depths of this is like impacting their mitochondria and it's creating more energy. And this is why that's important. And even just from the kind of esoteric sense of like, this is the right thing to do for people. And we can sleep really well at night knowing that we're making the right choices and we're on the right side of history. And so that's this whole introduction section. Then we have a full male start to finish, everything you could ever want to know about men and TRT. It's in that course. We have a female course, which we call the foundational course, which is it doesn't mean it's basic.
Yep.
It just means it's foundational, meaning women are complicated and they're way harder to deal with than men in terms of hormones.
Yep.
You really need this foundational approach before you start going and treating PCOS and PMDD and postpartum depression, all this stuff. Please just let me help you be able to treat a woman literally from 13 to 93. I'm going to show you how to treat every single woman at every single age with what hormone and when. We go into thyroid, full course on thyroid. Again,
Yep.
another start to finish, Hashimoto's disease, hypothyroidism, thyroid insufficiency. What are the different thyroid medications that we use and why? What's the history behind thyroid? All the good stuff. And then we even have an adjunct hormone course. So again, a lot of providers are like, dude, there's so many cool, I hear about pregnenolone and DHEA and melatonin. There's this oxytocin thing. What's up with that? Again, start to finish, let me show you the literature behind every single one of these things, what we know to be true and what we've used in what conditions to see really, really tremendous results. We're about to get accredited by the ANCC, which is like the leading, it's specific to nursing, but it covers all medical providers in terms of accreditation. So you'll literally be able to get hours here. Hopefully in the next month or two, we'll see that come live, which is super exciting. And again, we're just adding in more stuff. So we have a lot of stuff. We have, consent forms, sample consent forms. We have charting for like, hey, if I'm charting, how do I make sure I'm charting appropriately? And what are the legal things that I want to make sure I'm putting in there to cover my butt and all that? That's in there. We just uploaded patient handouts. So like, hey, I have a patient asking about progesterone. Here you go. Knock yourself out.
That is so huge. I mean, not only is it very engaging and very informative, and just like I would throw it in when I did cardio and everything, and I was pretty soon 45 minutes went by, right? It was easy.
Yeah.
But it's also really sleek, as you mentioned. It's very aesthetic. It's really nice. It's beautiful. I think what's really important is that, we've seen a lot of folks come into this space because of the rise of GLP-1s and peptides and different things. And so folks that weren't necessarily in the space have gotten into the space. And now that GLP-1s are, under some regulatory concern, they're looking to diversify and shift their business. And one of the areas we see at Scripps, because they reach out to us, is they want to start adding hormone replacement therapy and doing that. And so I think it is so important that if they're going to make that move and pivot over, that they do invest in something like this to really be able to provide the level of care that they want to and their patients deserve.
Dude, that's so well said. And I love that you brought that up, because I have seen it also. I mean, industry wide, weight loss, especially, we've seen that shift. And I'm not like bashing weight loss. Like I do deal with weight loss meds too. I think they're great, but it's simple. It's pretty darn simple. There's not a whole lot of magic to it. It's, you have a few doses and you go up or down. Whereas HRT and TRT is quite complicated in comparison. We have seen the aesthetics industry. I'm sure. Have you noticed that as well? Like a lot 100%. Of the aesthetics gals are like, you know what? This is like a no brainer. Why wouldn't we do this? Our patients want it. If I don't provide it, they're just going to go down to the street and get it from someone else. So, I love it. I think it's super exciting.
I do too. No, I totally do. And what we see too is kind of to your point, once those folks have, as an example, went with the weight loss and they've lost their weight, they're excited. They want to continue on their journey. They want to optimize. And so what's that next logical step? And it's getting optimized in their hormones, which will probably have as big or bigger impact than, what they've done previously. So
exactly. I always say, weight loss and aesthetics both do phenomenal things for people. They make you feel better. They make you look better, whatever. But at the end of the day, internally, you're just going to get older. And so really when I'm talking about feeling better and actually experiencing that sense of wellness beyond just like, yeah, I lost 50 pounds or yeah, my face is frozen up and I look really nice. I want it to be like, oh, deep down inside, I am myself again. And I'm maybe even a better version of that, which is super exciting.
Yep. And I know you just had an event last weekend. Very exciting. I hear it was awesome. So you plan on doing that again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was amazing. We had we took on way too much. We should have never done that.
Yeah.
We had all these providers like, it would be so cool if we did a live event. And of course I said yes. And then I'm like, oh my God, we have 7 months to plan this, which goes by so fast. But my wife, who's my business partner and just one of the most amazing people out there, total rock star.
Yeah.
She and my employee, Emily, who's another just freaking rock star. There's just the three of us. And they were just killers. They made I've been to a lot of conferences, and I'm not gonna lie, my conference was pretty badass, and it had nothing to do with me. It had absolutely nothing. I mean, these girls just absolutely made it. Just the experience was unbelievable. So everybody loved it. We're going to kick it up a notch. It was a little more business focused this time. A lot of the feedback that I got was like, Nico, when you talk about clinical shit, it rocks. Do more of that. So we're going to try to incorporate a little bit of both now the next time around, which would be fun. So I would love to have you guys out. It'd be super, super fun. So there's a great group of people. Everybody was just super nice. And you know how it goes. You get to network a little bit and meet people you never ever expect to meet and make some great connections. So
yeah, like-minded people though, right? It's good to be around people who are all on the same path. That's great. Well, look, I mean, this has been awesome. How do folks find you? How do folks find HRT University and Apollo as well? If they're, I know you're located in Cincinnati. Are you just helping folks there, or do you have a broader reach?
Yeah. Ohio and Kentucky is our reach. We're pretty regional in that sense, and we like that. So Apollo Health Optimization is the name of our clinic. ApolloHealthOP.com is where you could find us there. Or we're on Instagram and Facebook too if you typed in Apollo Health.
We'll put all those tags. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
HRT University is the name of my educational platform. So again, HRTUniversity.com is where you can find all our offerings and things like that, learn a little bit more about us. You can find tons of stuff. I've got a YouTube and podcast now. If you go to the Nico Misleh podcast, it's pretty generic. But you'll find me if you type in Nico Misleh. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. We have a great free Facebook group. It's called Nico's HRT University. It is very specific to medical providers. So that was a big thing for us. We don't want a bunch of, sales reps in there bothering people and stuff. So if you're a licensed provider, come join us. It's great. And then I write a daily email. That's honestly how most people find me, believe it or not. I'm pretty old school. I write it Monday through Friday myself. And that's Nico's daily email. And I'll provide you with that, Jeff, if you'd like the little opt-in. But you can find that anywhere if you go on to any of my podcasts and YouTubes and all that.
Yeah, I get those emails. They're awesome. Every day. It's
Thanks, brother. Appreciate that, man.
Little truth bombs, little pieces of gold delivered to my inbox. It's fantastic. So
thanks, brother.
No, that's great, man. Well, I think, folks, what you heard today in a very short hour was just the depth of knowledge that Nico is providing in his course. And as a patient, obviously, you're a beneficiary of that as well. So, brother, thanks so much for coming on, and hope to have you again.
You're the man, Jeff. Thank you. Seriously, very much.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's it for Unscripted today. We'll see you on the next episode.